I was doing research for my next video essay on Norm Macdonald when I came across an article in the Daily Beast that was so off base and so off-putting that I felt I had to do a rebuttal. And I did. It was scathing, nearly an hour long, full of meticulous research, blistering comebacks, and smug assuredness. But that's not me, folks. And that's not the video you're getting today. Look, I'm not a guy with a lot of opinions.
God damn, that guy's opinionated.
I used to have a lot more. Then I got really sick for a while. And when I got well, I decided it was better to be happy. And so I started approaching life with more gratitude and less cynicism. Still, this article struck a nerve with me in a way most things don't these days. And I'd like to explain why, while looking just a bit into it. Not as much as originally planned. The world is full of enough angry academic discourse, but enough to get the gist and lead a bit into a discussion on why I've made all of these Norm Macdonald videos to begin with. I'm not going to attack the writer personally. He's welcome to his opinion just like you are. And if your opinion is that you like this video, then please hit like and subscribe for more great content in the future. To start off, the title, Norm Macdonald has a terrible show and Michelle Wolf had a great one. Why are we settling? Implies we're not living our life to its fullest if we're watching Norm's show. Enough is written here in block red letters to impress upon us the grave seriousness of the situation. Wake up, sheeple, it says. Norm Macdonald has a show and you're all too blind to realize the implications. It's over the top, but what isn't these days? But it's the next part that stuck in my craw. Fallon writes, last month, Netflix canceled Michelle Wolf. Now it's parading around Norm Macdonald's ticker tape of stupid. Hollywood is severely broken. Norm Macdonald has a show proves it. It's the word stupid that gets me.
I'm a great reader of Russian literature and have been since a child.
It's judgmental, and it's not true. Stupid is the last thing Norm Macdonald was. Just because he was funny, sometimes goofy, that doesn't mean it was all he was.
Yes. I'm starting to do important comedy.
He graduated high school at 14 and enrolled in Carleton University at 16. He thought deeply about things.
There's two guys who were talking about some complex mathematic thing. This is in the late 90s. And they're saying this like, I didn't even understand what language it was. It was a really deep mathematic thing. And then Norm Macdonald, who had never brought up math or anything like that to me in his life, goes, that, and starts speaking to them in this, like, what sounded like tongues.
And he wrote a critically acclaimed, best-selling novel, even if a lot of people didn't realize it was a novel at the time.
Based on a true story isn't really a memoir, as the cover claims. It's closer to a novel, a Russian tragic comedy, perhaps Dostoevsky by the way of 30 Rockefeller Center.
He was also smart enough to try not to come across as the smartest guy in the room all the time.
Nobody likes a guy smarter than them. That's the worst guy you can be. A guy smarter than the audience. They're going to hate you.
Of course, I think he meant Norm was a different kind of stupid, and that bothers me even more, because it implies a sort of willful ignorance and the unwillingness to think things through. And Norm was the antithesis of both of those things. Had this article just been a bad review of Norm's Netflix show, it would not have been a big deal. These sorts of things are subjective, of course, and even I thought it wasn't quite as good as the much-beloved YouTube version, Norm Macdonald Live. However, this article isn't a fair critique of Norm Macdonald has a show, and I don't think it was ever meant to be. It belittles Norm as a person and a comic in order to make a larger political point. Norm becomes an abstraction, a metaphor, a stand-in for all bad comics. It paints Norm as some unenlightened, unfeeling frat bro, a shot comic, a dim-witted dullard, which couldn't be further from the truth. Fallon starts out with this. I honestly can't believe we're talking about Norm Macdonald. Buddy, you're the one doing it. Kind of. What he's really writing about is the cancellation of Michelle Wolf's show. Speaking of Michelle Wolf, her stand-up is really funny and you should check it out.
People say you can't make fun of what she wears because she's a woman. I think you can because it's fun to do.
I can't know for sure, but my guess is that she likely wasn't a big fan of some guy pitting her against Norm Macdonald in order to get people to read his column. Comedians see each other a lot out on the road, at festivals, etc., and this could have made for some awkward moments. Plus, the political comedy this author is celebrating Michelle Wolf for isn't even the kind of comedy she likes to do.
I'll write jokes for any topic.
Yeah.
But I don't like telling political jokes.
Then the author calls out Norm for a list of perceived sins. Some of which are slighting Hannah Gadsby, staunchly defending Louis C.K. and Roseanne, and worst of all, committing the inexcusable act of commenting on Lena Dunham's tweets. Real quick, the Hannah Gadsby thing comes from a question in the Hollywood Reporter. Speaking of Gadsby's special, Norm said, "I have never seen the Nanette thing because I never wanted to comment on it. But from what I've read about it, Gadsby is saying that comedy is now not about laughter. And of course, that's a slap in the face of a traditional stand-up comedian who thinks that comedy, by dictionary definition, is about laughter. And that's your job. You actually do have a job on stage. Nanette doesn't sound like stand-up to me. That sounds like a one-woman show. And one-person shows are, to me, incredibly powerful. But it's not stand-up comedy, and it's not the same thing. Let's put this in context. Norm was asked about a controversial Michael Che quote where it was assumed he was talking about Nanette and Gadsby. So Norm commented on it by saying he'd never watched it because he didn't want to comment on it. He was a famous person, kind of private.
No, I didn't know he was. He kept it all inside.
Yeah.
And, he was a private person.
And he wasn't known for courting controversy, even though he did find it a few times. When he said he might disagree with Hannah Gadsby's definition of stand-up, he didn't say anything personal about them or their act. It seems 100% in bounds to me. And it's unsurprising given Norm's stance on comedy.
I like all comedy. You probably do too, Norm,
Huh?
You probably like it all too.
I don't like political comedy.
You don't?
What they do now is confessional comedy. And I went to a club and I watched the comedians and I understood what he was talking about. Like I saw a one-woman show once. She was like, well, my mother had breast cancer, and now I have breast cancer. And I'm like, well, it's everybody. Like, they think it's so special when everyone gets cancer and dies. It's almost like the height of narcissism to think that you're going to, you're going to be so brave as to talk about it in person.
Right.
Whereas all you're doing is just garnering sympathy for yourself.
I mean, Norm once said, "I keep hearing how great Lenny Bruce and Bill Hicks and Mort Saul are. People have their own taste, but to me, all three of these people are just shit. They're not comedians in my mind." Norm just wasn't a huge fan of personal or confessional comedy, and he had been pretty clear on that for a long time. The way I see it, this was a non-story. In the case of Lena Dunham, Norm spent a night responding to some of her tweets, then when someone told him that it might be taken as offensive, he deleted them and contacted her personally to apologize, and she was okay with it. So to recap, Norm didn't mean to offend her, he apologized in person, and she didn't care anyway. Non-story. I want to talk a little more in depth about Roseanne and Louis C.K., especially Roseanne. Norm didn't staunchly defend either one of them. He was worried about Roseanne, his friend. She'd given him a job writing for her show early in his career. She had a well-documented history of mental illness.
I'm bipolar, amongst a million other things.
What does that mean?
I got more
exactly?
mental illness than your average bear.
Norm didn't defend the joke Roseanne made that got her in trouble. He certainly didn't defend what Louis did. He got them in contact with each other because he was afraid for Roseanne's safety, and he thought Louis could help, as he had been through a similar thing.
I've known Roseanne for a while, and I was worried
Why
about
wasn't
her
this story
because
presented as
she
stand-up
seemed
comedian
really,
helps out
really
mentally ill friend in
bad
time of
place.
need? Instead, it's presented out of context, as if Norm was going around the country telling everyone that what Louis and Roseanne did was A-OK, and that's just not the case. Fallon writes that Norm made a plea for extreme sympathy for Louis C.K. and Roseanne in the wake of their career fallouts. What even is extreme sympathy? Is it anything like extreme kindness or extreme generosity? Because I don't think those are bad things. In fact, I would say that having sympathy for someone who did something you disagree with is the pinnacle of what it means to be a human being. We don't have to throw people under the bus and treat them like trash the first time they do or say something we don't like. More than that, do we have to trash one person just because we're a fan of the other?
Characteristic you value most in others.
Well, generosity and kindness.
In the cultural milieu we live in, I was proud of Norm for trying to help Roseanne. I thought it was brave. The media, both social and traditional, pays a lot of lip service to understanding, helping, giving empathy to those that are mentally ill. But in reality, they remain the butt of jokes, scapegoats, serial killers in movies, that sort of thing. This article is just a byproduct of a bigger outrage machine where everything has to have a strong black and white opinion and be very loud just to be heard. Look, man, I get it. Netflix has canceled a ton of stuff I loved. Glow, for example. Another good example would be Norm Macdonald Has a Show. Well, not technically canceled, but they weren't going to bring it back. The talk show genre just didn't work out there, and it was no one's fault. It's aggravating, he writes, because of what Wolf's show and her material contributed to the national discourse, and the utter pointlessness of what's happening on Macdonald's series. Look, does everything have to contribute to the political discourse? Every late-night comedy show around these days is about the political discourse. They all want to be the Daily Show. Secondly, I don't like this idea that comedy for the sake of comedy is pointless. Laughing is one of the greatest things we can do in this life. It has real healing power. Sometimes things, comedy even, can be about human discourse, connecting on a level that is beyond whatever the current politics of the day happen to be, which are fleeting. Thirdly, let's give Norm Macdonald some credit for rescuing Adam Egot from underneath the Queensboro Bridge. Now that's true compassion, people.
I met you underneath the Queensboro Bridge.
Fallon wrote that Norm Macdonald says shitty things and makes shitty art, that he espouses lazy opinions under the assumption that what he says doesn't have to be informed or well considered because guys like him don't face repercussions for things like that. To me, that sounds like someone who knows nothing about Norm Macdonald. I don't want Norm to be remembered like that.
What it's like to be a Christian conservative comedian.
Yes, well,
Are you that?
It was more than this show or any one soundbite you can pull out of anywhere to make whatever point you think is so important that you need to trash a human being for it.
No, sir, I'm not.
Then why did he ask that?
I don't know that. Well, I'll tell you why. Because they've sometimes labeled me that. Because I have opinions that don't fit into either party. So sometimes they'll hear it and they'll call you a conservative because they like to say things like that. But I'm not conservative.
Are you Christian?
And I'm on a journey, a spiritual journey. Let's say that.
Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Did you all know that Kevin Fallon has a column and Michelle Wolf does not? How do we sleep at night?